We've got a full slate of games for Week 8. Everybody is playing. We've got dynamic divisional matchups. Backups and rookies are going to be asked to step up big time. And all in all, a fantastic week of football is ahead of us. Starting things off, as previously mentioned, there are no byes this week. The cumulative score of the Thicc picks is still hovering well above 500. Had, I believe, an 8-6 performance from me and a 10-4 performance on some shenanigans and lucky calls from you last week. Very impressive, very impressive. And finally, we do not predict the Thursday game, but since the Vikings are playing, here's your obligatory the Vikings are winning, as I do every single week. On to the Ravens versus the Browns, and Jameis Winston certainly makes this game a little bit more entertaining. I have some faith the Browns could move the ball in the air against this Ravens secondary, which is playing on a short week, and isn't that good, to be frank. Their passing defense leaves a lot to be desired. But Nick Chubb doesn't look the same. I know it was his first game back, but 2 yards a carry against that Bengals team, terrible. The receivers, terrible. Trade away Amari Cooper. Njoku's not performing at the level you'd hope, and their defense is regressing rapidly. There's really no way the Ravens beat the Browns unless Lamar turns it over 2-3 times, and even then, I just have a hard time seeing them pulling off an upset. Give me the Ravens in an unsurprising victory to start things off.
I'm really starting to heat up with my picks. I'm feeling that I might go perfect this week, put $100 on a 16-leg parlay, and come home with some cash.
It's always good to donate to Las Vegas. They're really struggling.
With that being said, the Browns don't stand a chance this week. I mean, if you want to know how the coaching staff feels about Jameis, he was the emergency third-string quarterback last week. Then Dorian Thompson-Robinson went in, stunk up the joint, and now Jameis is starting this week with basically no offensive weapons, not much of an offensive line in front of him. They're playing the Ravens, and the Ravens offense looks like potentially the best in the NFL this season, with Derrick Henry not getting too many carries, being able to have those big explosive plays, be rested up throughout the entirety of the game, Lamar passing the ball at a high level. So the Ravens should win by a landslide victory.
Admittedly, this will be the funniest upset of the week if the high and mighty best team of the AFC, Baltimore Ravens, gets knocked off by Cleveland. But another lopsided affair coming up, Titans versus the Lions. And there are two things which need to happen for the Titans to win. One, their defense needs to perform the same way they did against the Bills in the first half of that game, held them to 7 points, a really impressive showing. And Will Levis needs to not be the worst quarterback in the AFC. I don't know how likely either of those things are. I don't even know if Will Levis is going to start. I'm not optimistic about this one. Detroit should run over this team. They are better at every position besides defensive tackle than the Titans. Better all around. Jared Goff making a strong push for MVP, hanging out right behind Lamar Jackson right now. And inshallah, the Titans will do something to give me some faith in Will Levis, but I'm not optimistic.
Last week, the Titans kept it close for a short while last week. You thought they might have a chance at beating the Bills before Amari Cooper scored a touchdown and Josh Allen got things going. This week, whether it's Mason Rudolph, Will Levis, it's clear that offense is completely incompetent. There's a reason they shipped off DeAndre Hopkins to the Chiefs. And against the Lions, a team that is much more consistent than the Bills, they don't have those hot and cold streaks. I think it should be a very easy victory, and the Lions will win.
Yeah, I mean, not much needs to be said about this game. The only possible chance is if the Lions somehow have a Super Bowl hangover after beating the undefeated Vikings and beating the Cowboys, who were a big matchup for them. But Dan Campbell does not believe in that sort of thing, so pretty easy, Lions win.
The Colts being 4-3, they're heading to Houston this week, shows just how good of a coach Shane Steichen is. They win some weird games where we know their roster isn't all that great, but because of Shane Steichen and what he's able to generate on offense, make games close, they are not the worst team in the NFL. If they had a different coach coaching this team, they'd probably have 2 wins with the production they've received from the quarterback position in some spots this year.
AKA any spot Richardson is starting over Flacco.
Well, even with Flacco, I don't know if every coach in the NFL is as successful as Flacco has been with the Colts in the 2 games he started.
I don't know, man. That little spell at the end of last year, the Browns have begged to differ, but get on with your prediction.
With that being said, it's clear Anthony Richardson still needs some time to develop as a passer in the NFL. Everyone who's a Colts wide receiver fantasy manager wishes Joe Flacco was the starting quarterback because Josh Downs Alec Pierce, Michael Pittman. Maybe they catch a pass a game with Anthony Richardson in the lineup. With that being said, the Texans defense is going to bring it to Anthony Richardson. Their offense is going to be looking to rebound after a rough week last week against the Packers, and I expect the Texans to win.
Look, some guys benefit more heavily from sitting on the bench. Others benefit from starting. Richardson needs time to develop. I don't know what the best setting is for him. If he gets Jonathan Taylor back, that running attack gets a little bit more dynamic. They could open things up on the ground, make it easier for him to pass. Maybe we see something from him through the air, which we haven't seen the first half of the season. I'm not optimistic. CJ Stroud, completely different quarterback at home compared to traveling on the road. He's coming off the worst performance of his professional career last week against the Packers. I don't think that repeats itself. I don't care that Nico Collins isn't in the lineup. I think Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz are able to find holes in this Colts secondary, and I think Joe Mixon has another crisp 120, 130 yards like he did in the Week 1 matchup of this team. I'm also picking the Texans. Shouldn't be that competitive of a game. Keeping things in the AFC South, the Jaguars are hosting the Packers, and this is Doug Peterson's last stand. He is coaching for his life. The thing to watch this game is Brian Thomas taking on Jair Alexander. Now that Thomas has kind of inserted himself as the number one receiver both on the Jaguars and in this draft class, I think he will get cornerback one attention, and it should be pretty interesting to watch that all game. Admittedly, that's going to come down to how much pressure the Packers front seven gets on T-Law and if he's going to have time to wait for those long, deep developing poster corner routes to really get going. All in all, the Packers are the better team, better rushing attack, deeper wide receiver room, better quarterback, better lines. Maybe you want to give the edge to Jacksonville's front seven and their edge play. I could acknowledge that as an argument. They're better coached. This game shouldn't be close. I think we might be seeing the last game of Doug Peterson this week at home.
I agree. I want the Jaguars to be good because once again, I drafted Trevor Lawrence in too many fantasy leagues this year as my quarterback in a super flex and another league. That's besides the point. They're not very good of a team. They've looked bad even in the 2 games they've won this season. And against a Packers team that is well coached, is better at every single position. Like you said, maybe the edge players, maybe you prefer Evan Ingram over Tucker Kraft. But when you're a worse coach team, a less talented team, playing a team that takes the ball away at a higher rate than any other defense in the NFL, and has a quarterback that's on pace for 45 passing touchdowns, you are going to lose.
Who prefers Evan Ingram over Kraft in 2024? What are we talking about here? That is a preposterous thing to say. Everyone thinks Kraft is better. And I will put one note in here about Jordan Love. You mentioned the turnovers in our video earlier this week. I don't think that's that big of an issue, but if he turns the ball over multiple times against this terrible Jaguars passing defense, then that might be a cause for concern. Then you can see, okay, it's getting a little bit out of hand. But I personally don't see that happening. Again, give me the Packers.
We have the Cardinals versus the Dolphins. And this is a big game this week because Tua is back. Fantasy managers are rejoicing. If you own Tyreek Hill, Jaylen Waddle, Devon Achane, you are crossing your fingers you get the Dolphins offense that we saw over the first 2 weeks of the season when these players were dominating. I just don't think that's going to be the case. Somehow the Dolphins find themselves with the number 1 passing defense in the NFL this season, but 3 of their 6 games have come against Anthony Richardson, Mason Rudolph, and Jacoby Brissett. So when you take that into consideration, their defense is not all that great. They're playing a team that actually has the ability to push the ball down the field, while the Cardinals, you don't know which version of them is going to show up, but after beating the Chargers last week, I think they're going to have some momentum built. I think hopefully they continue to find better ways to get Marvin Harrison Jr. the ball, and I expect them to win this week against the Dolphins.
I mean, with Arizona's offense, everything comes down to how well James Conner is running the ball. If he can get some motion going on the ground, make defenses key in on him a little bit more, that clears things up for Harrison and McBride if they're going to get open to do something. I think the Dolphins have an all right run defense, not the worst in football. They played some run-heavy teams and still fared well. The area of weakness for this Arizona team is their inability to generate pressure. Unless they heavily blitz, Tua is going to be back there in that pocket behind Armstead all day, just dinking and dunking his way down the field. I don't care if you got 8 guys back playing zone. Jaylen Waddle and Tyreek Hill are going to find a way to get open. Tua is going to find somebody to throw to. Achane, Jonnu Smith, somebody out of the backfield is going to find a way to catch the ball. I think the Dolphins offense is very productive against Arizona and their lackluster scheme. Sure, the Cardinals could match them, but I think the Dolphins defense is better than you're giving it credit for. I get it's bolstered by weaker quarterback play they've been facing, but I'm still picking Miami into his return at home down in Miami. Give me the Fins.
The Dolphins didn't look all that great in the 2 games Tua was healthy this year, so there's not that much confidence.
They looked good in the first game. The second game, one could argue he had got a concussion long before he got knocked out. But
20-17 win against the Jaguars. Woo!
I'm sorry you don't appreciate winning football. As a Giants fan, I know wins are hard to come by, so they don't really get their value. Keeping it in the AFC East, the Jets taking on the Patriots, and there's a lot in me which wants to pick Drake May to just ride in and dominate this Jets defense without Saul, just cook them viciously. Aaron is unable to respond, left seething and coping on the sideline, yelling at Gary Wilson, demanding he get traded off the team ASAP. That's fan fiction. That's not going to happen. The Jets dominated the Patriots earlier in the year, and I think they're going to dominate them again. This defense is simply too talented to get lit up by a rookie quarterback throwing to nobody. The Jets offense, it's going to get better week by week. This is an easy opponent, a tune-up game, a defense which has been called soft by their own head coach. They should be able to cook this defense. Devonta Adams should receive the lion's share of targets. Garrett Wilson should be able to do something, assuming Rodgers is not just phasing him out of the offense entirely. The Jets are winning this game.
It would be hilarious if the Jets fell to 2-6. I think everyone would enjoy it, watching Aaron Rodgers continue to deal with that weekly on the Pat McAfee show. But you have to imagine, I have to imagine, it just can't get that bad. It can't get that bad for the Jets. Last week, they had a game on Monday night, and it was coming off of a week where they had to travel to London. That's a little bit difficult to deal with a new player joining your offense. And I have to think against a Patriots team that are just bad all around, and the only hope they really have for the future is Drake May, that they're going to be able to move the ball. I expect Breece Hall and that running game to get going better than they have all season long.
Heard that before. I've heard that every week, actually.
I haven't expected it every week. That's
I don't know, man.
We've
been talking about Breece Hall getting it going this side of the room for an awful long time.
Now you're just making up fake news and putting words
all
in
right,
my mouth.
man.
I've only been
Breece Hall
talking about
too?
how bad the Jets' run game has been. I haven't said 1 week that I expect it all of a sudden to get better.
Roll the tape.
But I think they can actually... There's no tape that's going to be rolled. But I think they can actually get... Because it doesn't exist. I think they can actually run the ball this week, and I expect Aaron Rodgers to be able to throw the ball down the field more than he did the week prior.
The only way the Patriots offense gets in this game is if Ramondre Stevenson is able to have that productive week 1-esque performance he had again, minus, of course, the fumble ski has just been killing the Patriots with turnovers all year. I don't think that's happening. I've got the Jets winning.
The Falcons and Buccaneers would have been a more interesting game if it happened last week, where we would have been guessing maybe the Buccaneers probably will win, maybe the Falcons have a chance at winning. The game's in Tampa, but now Mike Evans is hurt, probably going on the IR. Who knows when he's going to be back? Chris Godwin's definitely on the IR. And now their wide receiver room all of a sudden has a bunch of names you don't really recognize or that have any name value recognition without Sterling Shepard, who's about 7 years past his prime.
Sterling Shepard has no name recognition outside of New York.
No, he has some name. He's a former second-round pick. People know who Sterling Shepard is.
No, they don't.
Unless you're a supreme casual like yourself.
The supreme casuals totally keep up with the Giants wide receiver 8.
He's not the Giants wide. He's not even on the Giants.
Exactly.
And at the time, he was a wide receiver 1 or 2. Do you know who Sterling Shepard is?
I'm familiar with who Sterling Shepard is. I'd like to think, based off where I'm sitting on this podcast, that I know more obscure football players, particularly talking to you, a diehard Giants fan who overhyped him every year. They got bad receivers.
Point made. If you want to belabor how relevant, whatever, that doesn't matter. The Falcons are looking to rebound after a tough loss against the Seahawks where everything started going wrong early. I have the Falcons winning.
Gonna need to be a pretty big Jalen McMillan game, certainly for the Buccaneers passing attack to get going. The issue Falcons face is their front seven is susceptible to getting ground out and ran on. Maybe you think Bucky Irving and White can really get things going on the ground, make it a competitive game. If you watch the last matchup between the Falcons and the Buccaneers, you know the Bucs were the better team even though they lost. So maybe you think there's a glimmer of hope there, but I'm also going with the Falcons. It is hard to sustain 2 injuries to your superstar wide receivers and bounce back the next week. Eagles taking on the Bengals. And Lawson talks about how bad C.J. Gardner-Johnson is, and dear God, he is bad, is the fact the Eagles have a really good secondary, a really good pass defense, and that pass rush the past few weeks has finally started to get home. This is a pretty good defense. I think they are going to get after Joe Burrow to the extent that you can. The O-line, the Bengals, banged up. The receivers outside of Jamar Chase underperforming this year, and I think they will neutralize everybody besides Jamar Chase. Granted, He is certainly good enough to beat you by himself with Joe Burrow's help, so that could still be an angle. But looking at the Eagles offense, they run the ball well. The Bengals are going to have to commit a whole lot to stop Saquon from going for a crisp 120 on the ground. And if they do that, no matter how bad you think Jalen Hurts is, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are going to get open in single-man coverage, and that'll lead to some points being scored. The Bengals, they're going to fall to 3-5. They're going to be done for the year. The Eagles move on, 5-2. Good team, and all that hoopla about firing Sirianni becomes a thing of the past.
I still feel pretty confident about Sirianni potentially getting fired after the season, and the Eagles hater in me wants to pick them to lose. Even after Saquon Barkley beat the piss out of the Giants last week, their passing attack left nothing to get excited about. All season long, there has been much to get excited about with their passing attack. Half their passing yards last week came from a 44-yard touchdown to A.J. Brown. They are extremely reliant on the big playability from their receivers. There's not much fluidity to their passing attack, but they're playing a Bengals team that 2 weeks in a row struggled against the Giants, they struggled against the Browns, and I'd have to imagine against the Eagles, they are going to be able to get some big plays from A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith. They'll be able to move the ball, and Saquon Barkley against the Bengals defense that is not all that great is going to be able to run the ball at a high level, so I'm still picking the Eagles to go to Cincinnati and win this week.
You're picking the Eagles because you're not a man of conviction. You're not a true hater. I will show you what a true hater looks like when you start talking about the Broncos. I feel it's a little bit unfair to talk down on the Eagles about last week's passing performance. 46 yards came on one play. They attempted 14 passes, completed 10 of them. They had another path to victory they exploited. But we don't need to get down to the reeds of that game. You can lead us into the Chargers and the Saints.
Saints, Chargers, little disappointing last week. I picked them to beat the Cardinals, but this Saints team, they got us excited over the first 2 weeks, and each week since then, Alvin Kamara has been less productive on the ground. They haven't really gotten Chris Olave involved all season long. Their defense has gotten worse every single week. I think they've given up, 84 points over the last 2 games combined. Their defense is flat out bad. The narrative Isaiah was pushing at the beginning of the season for Dennis Allen to get fired, it really looks like it's starting to come to fruition. So with the strength of this Chargers defense, the Chargers really starting to get fully healthy on the offensive side of the ball at home in Los Angeles, the Chargers should win.
Yeah, I'm never wrong. I'm just early. And the combination of Jake Haener, Spencer Rattler, and the island of misfit toys that is the Saints offense really does not inspire me with a bunch of confidence. Their O-line's been banged up. They're not giving whatever quarterback they stick back there much time in the pocket. Olave may play. It's hard to say this week dealing with a bad concussion. If he doesn't, the receiving room's cooked. And LA really struggled because the tackle play on the left side was appalling without Rashawn Slater against the Cardinals. And most of Herbert's weapons did not see the field. Still threw for just under 350 yards. Impressive Justin Herbert game. I expect that to continue. I expect him to barbecue this sorry Saints secondary and a pretty easy Chargers win. Granted, no games from the Chargers look particularly easy just based off play style, but neither here nor there. Big game from the Gus Bus.
Bills are headed to Seattle to take on the Seahawks, and Seahawks fans are not happy with me last week because I said Kirk Cousins was going to slice and dice them up the field, and their healthy defense, according to them, was going to take care of business. Turns out they did take care of business. They made Kirk Cousins look bad, and they won by a pretty wide margin. But playing completely immobile Kirk Cousins is a lot easier than playing Josh Allen, who can move around the field, run the ball on you, throw it down the field, and now has a brand new receiver in Amari Cooper that's going to be better after his first week last week. So, with all that taken into account, yes, the Seahawks are a solid team. They looked better with their healthy starters and Byron Murphy healthy along that front seven and the defensive line. But with Josh Allen back there, Amari Cooper, I'm picking the Bills to win. And the path to victory for the Seahawks, because the Bills are not all that great against the run, is if Zach Charbonnet and Kenneth Walker just happen to go crazy.
I don't know if I'd call Amari Cooper brand new. That man's got a lot of tread on his tires from Oakland to Dallas to
Brand
Cleveland.
new to the Bills.
Well, no, he's not because he played in the last game. But you're right. If they do want to get some offense going, they have to stop the Bills from getting out to a 2-score lead, jumping on them early, get Charbonnet and Walker doing some work on the ground. We've watched the Bills struggle in the first half of games all year. Did it to open the season, did it last week against the Titans. They're not a good first half team. That's the Seahawks' path to victory. If they can keep running their offense throughout the game, they don't let the Bills offense do what the Lions and the 49ers did to the Seahawks and just exploit them, make Geno Smith a solo option, make him pass the ball 40 times. If they are able to stay in this game, I feel pretty good about the Seahawks. It's going to be very competitive. I'm always, though, going to side with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. Even if they're flying across the country, even if they're playing in a hostile environment, even if they're playing a very well put together offense, I just have more faith in him and the Bills receivers to win this game. So I'm also going with Buffalo. Now, on to a game which, if not for an injury, would be the game of the week. Bears taking on the Commanders. And as of right now, it is uncertain if Jayden Daniels is going to play. And a lesser man might say, well, if Daniels plays, the Commanders will win. If he doesn't, yada yada, the Bears win, whatever. I'm not a lesser man. The Commanders are winning this game regardless. And I'll tell you why. Even if Chicago's defense steps up and plays well, we have seen them struggle dealing with dual threat quarterbacks. The threat of Anthony Richardson running the ball paralyzed them. Let Jonathan Taylor ram the ball down their throat when they played the Colts earlier in the year. The threat of Marcus Mariota or Jayden Daniels will be enough to do that. Brian Thomas, massive game on the ground. His biggest rushing performance of the season. They're going to run their offense.
Brian Robinson,
thank you. Potato. They're going to run their offense. They're going to complete the short stuff. They're going to keep that clock rolling. And if they can hold on to the ball, they will score at least 25, maybe 30 points on this Bears defense. Flipping things over, Caleb Williams' trip through Candyland is still going on a little bit, but the Commanders have forced 4 turnovers in the past 3 weeks. They're generating possessions for their offense. They're letting the folks over there on that side of the ball play keep away rather. They are doing better than we expected. If Mikey Sainristil can get another interception, if that front seven can get a strip sack on Caleb Williams, that will be the deciding factor. I think they can. Caleb Williams is still a young quarterback. He's still turnover prone, and he's playing a much better defense than he was any of the previous 4 weeks. Certainly than his game against the Jaguars 2 weeks ago in London. I think the Commanders pull off the upset without Jayden Daniels.
Well, a big key to the Commanders' success has been the fact that they're taking the ball away and not really turning the ball over at all. And if you have Marcus Mariota in there, playing the Bears defense is a much different story from carving up the Panthers defense. It is not even close to the same thing. This is a top 5 defense that Jayden Daniels or Marcus Mariota is going to be walking into, and they're going to put pressure on them, and they're going to force 1 or 2 turnovers and give the ball back to their offense. And the Commanders defense has been kind of middle of the pack this year. They're not as bad as many would have expected. Dan Quinn has really done a lot to turn that defense around to be productive enough for what has been a very good offense. And heading into this game, it was going to be electric with the Jayden Daniels, Caleb Williams matchup. Caleb Williams has gotten better every single week, but whether it's Jayden Daniels dealing with an injury, not being able to maybe push the ball down the field like we've seen the entirety of the season so far, I think the Bears win based off the strength of their defense and Caleb Williams and that run game improving every week. And they're also coming off a bye, which is going to help.
A bye is a bigger deal if you're dealing with a good coach. I have very little faith in Eberflus to get his boys fired up and ready to go. If Daniels plays, it will be the game of the week. Uncertainty about that regardless. Either way, still get me watched, and you can intro the lovely game at Mile High Stadium.
So exciting. Panthers, Broncos, Bo Nix versus Bryce Young. And really the only thing you need to hear is that the Broncos are giving up 15 points a game. The Panthers are scoring about 15 points a game. Bryce Young, Andy Dalton, either one of them, not very good. The Panthers' offense is horrible. Their defense is giving up 34 points a game. The Broncos are going to win.
Well, you're wrong. You should feel bad about yourself. I would like to point out one thing prior to my prediction. Andy Dalton has got to play the Cupcake Raiders, the Mickey Mouse Bengals, and the Washington Commanders as his 3 opponents. Meanwhile, poor little Bryce Young has been stuck with the Red Hot Saints defense, which was fully healthy to start the year, the Chargers, and now the Denver Broncos, as you said, giving up 15 a game. Very impressive. I think Canales is trying to set Bryce Young up for failure and get him out of town so he can get his quarterback, the quarterback he wants in the team. Whether that be a rookie, a free agent, whatever. I don't think Canales has Bryce Young's best interest at heart. Too bad for Canales. Bryce Young is barbecuing this defense. The Broncos pass rush has been getting on top of every quarterback in football they have played. The beauty of Bryce Young, it's really easy to get on top of him, but he can get under you. He is going to slip under the Broncos pass rush.
So use a bottom?
Scurry around. carve up that defense. That secondary is not that good. Patrick Surtain is doing a lot of carrying with his big name value. Leggett will get open. Thielen will get open. Somebody will get open. I don't have much faith in Deontay Johnson. I don't know if he'll get open. The running game,
he's been their
getting
best receiver.
better and better the ball bounced off his face mask last week for an interception. The running game, getting better and better each week. Flipping things over, Bo Nix is the quarterback for the Denver Broncos. There is not much more which needs to be said. An unimpressive game manager, system, merchant, beneficiary of an elite defense, and a very good offensive line. Not going to happen this week. I don't know how the Panthers defense is going to stop them. You're going to have to help me fill that one in, but they're going to stop. The Panthers are going to Mile High Stadium and pulling off the one. Oh, there it is. Bo Nix is not built for the heights of competition, much like he is not built for the height at Mile High Stadium. He is going to suffocate in this altitude. Give me the Broncos to lose in embarrassing fashion. Carolina pulls off the upset, and we're keeping things in the AFC West. You do not get to respond to that. The Chiefs are playing the Raiders, and it's going to be the most boring win all season for the Kansas City Chiefs. So it'll probably be a controversial call in there somewhere. Not much needs to be said about this game. 9.5-point lines. DeAndre Hopkins now on the Chiefs. What do you think's going to happen?
Well, if the Broncos don't win that game that you said I'm not allowed to respond to, they might have to release Bo Nix and fire Sean Payton, because that would be an embarrassing loss.
Release Bo Nix, maybe just execute Sean Payton for the hell of it.
And then with the Chiefs-Raiders, I mean, the Raiders, they're decimated by injuries. Christian Wilkins is injured. They just traded away Devontae Adams. Aiden O'Connell went down last week. Not that that means all that much.
I was going to say that's a net positive, but...
And clearly this is a team that the ownership is giving the general manager and head coach at least through this season and next season to try and build around a young quarterback. They're not super focused on winning. I expect the Chiefs to win. They just added DeAndre Hopkins. It'll be interesting to see what he's able to do in 1 week. He is kind of washed, but, we'll have to wait and see.
The thing with D-Hop is, if you remember early in the year, the Chiefs were just cooking teams with the Rashee Rice slant routes. So they would just give them too much space, fearing the deep threat, and then he'd cut under and get that ball and then turn upfield and do something with it. I think Diop is still going to get that respect, still catch those balls, but he's just going to do nothing after the catch because of how old and slow and how heavy his dreads are holding him down. I have no faith in him to be a massive threat. I've been much more upset if the Chiefs got an Amari Cooper or Devontae Adams. Like, DeAndre Hopkins, whatever. That is a lateral move from Juju Smith-Schuster at this point. Anyway, Sunday night game, Cowboys taking on the 49ers. Debo, Kittle, Juice, and Jordan Mason are going to have to step up big time. Admittedly, they're playing a defense where it is easy to step. Micah Parsons, unconfirmed reports that he may be coming back for this game. I am not particularly optimistic about that for him, particularly against his father, Trent Williams. I think he's going to want to avoid that matchup if at all possible. But having said that, the Cowboys, better O-line, better number one receiver, and better quarterback. And that means a lot. I think Dallas is moving the ball through the air better than they have in a good while against this banged-up San Francisco defense. Admittedly, they're going to have to stay far away from Fred Warner, and they're going to have to do something about Nick Bosa besides stick Guyton on an island with him, because that is not going to work out. So if that is addressed, I can see the Cowboys offense really cooking. The 49ers, I just don't think they're figuring it out. I don't think they're figuring it out until Christian McCaffrey gets back and is healthy. Certainly not without Jawan Jennings or Brandon Ayuk. I think they're going to be sluggish, lethargic, not even be terrible in the red zone, just be terrible all over the field. The yardage isn't going to be there. I think Dallas pulls off the upset on the road.
Normally, this would be an easy game for me to predict. The Cowboys are atrocious at stopping a run. The 49ers are very good at running the ball. The 49ers are a better coached team. But the entire 49ers team is injured. They lost Brandon Ayuk last week. Jawan Jennings is dealing with a hip injury. Debo has pneumonia that he was hospitalized for last week. Who knows how good his cardio is going to be heading into this week. Christian McCaffrey, still not playing.
Still in Germany.
Nick Bosa has an elbow injury. So a lot of these 49ers players are dealing, and Kittle has a foot injury, almost forgot about him. So this whole 49ers team is dealing with injuries, and they're playing a Cowboys team that is coming fresh off of a bye. The Cowboys offense, actually, none of their starters have injury designations heading into this week, which is good for them. Mike McCarthy, 12-5 off a bye, 2-1 off a bye as the Cowboys head coach. So I think, much like you said, CeeDee Lamb, Dak Prescott are going to be able to get things going this week, and the Cowboys are going to win.
I mentioned the better O-line. Trent Williams is still a very good left tackle. I think we are finally starting to see, though, like whether it be Darrisaw, whether it be, I know he's hurt right now, Andrew Thomas at points. Like the rest of the league is kind of catching up with Trent Williams. He is slowing down in his age, and as part of that, the rest of that O-line is falling off a cliff because of how hard they were getting carried by their blindside tackle. I could see a lot of pressure being generated on Purdy this week. But I'm going to let you lead off into the Sunday night game with the lovely New York Giants taking on the
Monday
Pittsburgh
night?
Steelers. Potato. A night game which will incur great emotional trials.
It's a game that should have been flexed because clearly last week without Andrew Thomas, I don't even know if the Giants have a college-level offense. Daniel Jones can't throw the ball more than 10 yards down the field accurately to receivers. Last week we have Malik Neighbors pointing to guys that are open while he's running his own route. That's the current state of the Giants' passing attack, and they're playing a Steelers team that has an elite defense, has an offense that is at least functional, and I think the Steelers will win. Now, there is the potential for the game to be super low scoring because the Giants have a very good defense. I'm not a major fan of Najee Harris. He's not all that explosive as a running back. And Russell Wilson, will he be able to string two good weeks together? I don't know. So I think this game has a lot of potential to be a 14-6 or 14-3 game, but the Steelers will still win.
We respect 1,000-yard rusher Najee Harris, first-round draft pick Najee Harris on this program. Show some class, show some refinement.
You need to stop saying we and say I.
It's the royal we, son. He is going for a crisp 85 yards, I think 24 carries, somewhere in that range. Probably a touchdown in there somewhere. Respect Najee Harris. Anyway, it's not going to be low scoring, at least for the Steelers. They're cooking. The Giants secondary, lackluster. Their pass rush, I mean, you'd expect it to be better. Outside of Dexter Lawrence, have we really seen elite production from anyone?
Brian
Maybe
Burns has
has
been really
his
good.
spots, but he hasn't been great. Thibodeau, bum. I mean, what empty calorie stat, man, is still somehow having empty calorie stats in competitive games. It is impressive how much of a non-factor Kayvon Thibodeau's
He's
stats
not even
are.
healthy right now.
Exactly. Spiritually, he is dragging this team down. A true plague upon the organization.
Brian Burns has been really good, though.
Yeah, he's been really all right. Anyway, I've got the Steelers winning this game. It's not going to be a compelling game. I'll probably find something else. You know, the NBA's on it. The Hornets will probably be playing someone Monday night. I'd rather watch a Hornets game than this. Bad state of affairs in the NFL. No class, no refinement, no shame. And we'll see you next week.
That has been our Week 8 predictions. Let us know your picks down in the comments below. Like the video, subscribe, use code Thicc on Underdog. Gives you bonus cash up to $1,000, and we will see you in the next one.